Afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here. I'd like to start by recognizing the other leaders that are here with me today. Chicago Department of Public Health Commissioner Dr. Allison Arwady, Business Affairs and Consumer Protection Commissioner Rosa Escarina. We are together so much, I don't think either of you really need any introduction at this point. I want to recognize Deputy Mayor for Neighborhood and Economic Development, Samir Mayakar, my friend and restaurateur, Alderman Tom Tunney, Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership CEO, Karen Norrington Reeves. Thank you, Karen, for being here. And Carla Augustinelli, Executive Director of the West Loop Community Organization. As we're all aware by now, we are in the midst of a second surge of COVID-19. There's no question about that. And it is the surge that we feared would happen. And yet another critical inflection point on our long journey with this terrible pandemic. And as the weather gets colder and people spend more and more time indoors, new cases have reached, unfortunately, record levels. We've put on, I think, about 30,000 cases since the beginning of October. And with the state's recent closure of indoor dining service, our hospitality industry is facing yet another barrier to recovery from this absolutely unprecedented crisis that has hit them probably the most hard of any industry in our city. Now, as mayor, I've made a priority to do everything in my power to support our residents, our workers, and our businesses as we all continue to navigate these very uncharted waters. And it's in that spirit that I am proud to join these fellow city leaders in announcing 4 new relief initiatives to support our neighborhood bars and restaurants during this very difficult time. First and foremost, we're rolling out a $10 million hospitality grant program to assist our city's independent bars and restaurants that have had to shut down indoor service as a result of the state order. These grants, which are made possible through a reallocation of our CARES Act funding, will be administered in partnership with World Business Chicago and CDPH partners. They will provide businesses with grants of $10,000 each and will be distributed citywide through a lottery. We will take extra effort to make sure this funding is distributed with an equity lens, just as we have done throughout this pandemic, meaning businesses in our most underserved, underinvested communities have access to these emergency funds. And the application will open the week of November 16th, and grants will be distributed before the end of the year. And we'll provide more details shortly. Again, we know that there's a sense of urgency around getting these grant funds into the hands of our small businesses, and we're going to do everything we can to expedite the process as quickly as possible. The second initiative is a launch of a new campaign called Takeout Chicago. With the support of Choose Chicago, we will be encouraging residents with the financial ability to do so to support our beloved hospitality industry. Our neighborhood restaurants and bars make up the backbone of so many communities across the city. And if we want them to survive, and of course we do, we all need to show them our love and our support, and particularly patronize them in this difficult time. So let me give you the details about this contest. Residents who order takeout from 10 different bars and restaurants between today and December 15th will be entered into a contest to win VIP tours for themselves and 3 others at one of our renowned cultural institutions, including Soldier Field, the Art Institute, and DeSable Museum, and more. This is a behind-the-scenes look at these iconic institutions in our city. So once again, you've got to order from 10 different restaurants between now and December 15th to be eligible for the lottery for these VIP tours. Participating residents can enter the contest by submitting their name and the list of residents and bars they ordered from at chi.gov/takeout. That's chi.gov/takeout. Now, we're putting you on the honor system. We wanted to make sure you actually do this because this is all about supporting our local bars and restaurants. So do the right thing. If you've got the means, order from 10, and then put yourself in a position to win one of these great behind-the-scenes VIP tours. Participants can use the hashtag #TakeOutChicago to spread the word to friends and family. And to kick off this initiative and mark my first restaurant off the list, and yes, I'm all about it. I've ordered takeout from a Black female-owned business, Lexington Betty Smokehouse, and we're going to be providing food for everyone who's here. I got to tell you, it smells absolutely delicious. And let me just tell you a little bit about Lexington Betty's. They are a Black women-owned barbecue chain that's still expanding with locations on both our south and west side. In fact, it just opened a new location in the food hall of the newly renovated Cook County Hospital. The two owners are with us today. I'm excited, they're excited. And I encourage those watching now to have the resources to do so, to start thinking about what's your 10, about what you want to order for takeout to help support our local businesses. And I think I'm supposed to show you the goods. Ladies, good stuff. Let me come from behind the podium and give you a little peek. For those who are interested, this is good stuff. So, I got a little Sammy, barbecue, some sides. Can you see that, guys? And, of course, you need something sweet when you eat barbecue. I got a little cookie action here, too. So, please support them. Now, I said we're going to do 4 things today. Here's the third. To alleviate the added financial strain that the increased reliance on delivery has created, I will be working in concert with a number of aldermen, Alderman Tunney in particular, Alderman Wagesback, and Alderman O'Shea, to pursue legislation that will temporarily cap the fees that third-party delivery companies can charge restaurants and bars for their services. Folks, this is fundamental. We just got to put more money in the hands of these restaurants and bars as they are compelled to really go online, to really rely upon delivery and curbside pickup. We've got to be fair to them and make sure that they have the ability to pay their bills, keep their employees employed, and capping temporarily the third-party delivery fees, I think, is a good way to make sure that we're moving in the right direction to support our small businesses. Now, this is going to require legislative change, and as I mentioned, I'll be working with members of the City Council so that we do this in an inclusive and transparent way. But I want to get this done. I want to get it done as quickly as we can. So we'll be working and hustling with Alderman Tunney, Alderman Wagesback, and Alderman O'Shea, and others in the city councils, so we can bring some additional measure of relief to our restaurants. And I look forward to collaborating with members of the city council to get this legislation passed in the final few weeks, the next few weeks. Now, fourth, but certainly not least, we are launching ShyServes.com. That is ShyServes.com. With the support of the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership. ShyServes.com will assist displaced hospitality workers by connecting them to resources, including job application, career counseling, and job training to reskill and re-enter the workforce through the partnership. And as I'm sure we're all aware, COVID-19 has left a particularly devastating impact on our hospitality workers, many of whom have lost their jobs and can no longer access unemployment due to expired federal relief. And if we're honest, there are going to be some in the hospitality industry who are just never going to be able to access unemployment benefits. We need to be thinking about them as well. This initiative will give all these workers access to the employment and professional development opportunities they need to find stability and get back on their feet during these unprecedented times. Now, make no mistake, today's announcements are by no means fixes for the many challenges that the hospitality industry currently faces. They're the result of our city and our partners working together to use every last resource we have to support our businesses in the best way we can, all while being guided by our values of equity and inclusion. And let me just depart from my prepared script. There's a lot of uncertainty in our land right now because we don't know who the next president is going to be. But I think the fact that our hospitality industry, along with many others, continues to suffer as a result of COVID-19 economic impacts just underscores the need for the federal government, the House and the Senate, to do their jobs and bring relief to our cities so that we can support the backbone of our economy, which is our small businesses. There is no reason for any further excuses. The federal government, the House and the Senate need to step up and do the right thing. We know that the financial impact of COVID-19 has deeply affected every city, every town across the country. This is not a partisan issue, and so it should not be decided by partisanship. This is a time when, as a country, we must come together, we must unite, we must stand together to help our neighbors who are desperately in need. Now, I sit here as a mayor and think $10 million will have some impact, but not nearly the impact that it would have if we had real partnership with the federal government, if there was a real stimulus bill that came here to our city. We need them to work together. So I'm just telling anybody and urging anybody within the sound of my voice, stand up and demand a level of accountability from the House and the Senate. Put a bill on whether it's this president or the next president's desk. We desperately need help from the federal government to solve so many of these challenges on behalf of our neighbors, our friends, our small businesses. We need this done. Now, we're not going to wait. As you heard from us today, we're doing our part, but life would be better if we had a functioning federal government that actually heard the needs and reflected the lived experience of people, not just in Chicago or Illinois or even the Midwest, but all across this country who are hurting and suffering as a result of COVID-19 economic meltdown. So please, please, Congress, stand up and do your job. Now, I want to also underscore that if we do our part every single day to curb the spread of this horrible second surge of this virus, we will also curb the need for our businesses, or curb the reality of our businesses suffering. Why are our businesses closing down? Why are they in such dire strait? It is directly related to COVID-19. I said this to somebody earlier today. This is a disease that each one of us has the power in our own hands to make an enormous difference. When I see people walking down the street and they're not wearing a face covering, when I see people gathering in large crowds, despite the fact that we have been preaching for months now that gathering in large social settings is a death knell, literally, for people in our city, I am absolutely livid, but also more determined to make sure that we educate people into compliance. Every single individual has a role to play. We will not get past this second wave unless people step up and recognize this is serious, shake off the COVID fatigue, step up and do the right thing for yourself, for your loved ones, and for your city. You know, we take a lot of great pride in Chicago as being this city that of big shoulders, where we take care of ourselves, where we are second to none. Well, if that's all true, prove it. Prove it by doing the right thing in this difficult time. Let me also just touch upon Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday of the year, a time when normally we'd be gathering with family and friends, take the day off, eat a ridiculously big meal, right? Watch a little football. We all have our Thanksgiving traditions. But this year has to be different. This year, we can't enjoy the traditional open up the doors and bring all the family into our homes. That is dangerous in this time. So please, folks, be sensible, be smart, and take care of yourselves. But don't have a big crowd in your home. We know that a considerable amount of the growth in COVID-19 cases, and Dr. Arwady will talk more eloquently about it than I could ever be, but we know that one of the places that is a serious problem with spread is social settings, in the homes, in private settings, where people let their guard down, take their mask off, and just say, hey, you're my friend, you're fine, you're safe. Cannot do that. We've got to make sure that we understand the virus is here, it is deadly, and it is destroying lives every single day. So we've got to step up and do our part, limit the number of people in indoor spaces and social gathering. So I think I'll stop there, thank everyone, and just say to our small businesses, this is an extraordinarily difficult time. No question about it. I think about the workers. I mentioned last week, my wife and I went out to kind of what we morbidly called our Last Supper, to a neighborhood restaurant. And there was a woman that was working there. She came and brought the water and the bread. And at the end of the evening, as we were getting ready to leave, she asked if she could have a photograph, which I was absolutely honored to do. And I just became overcome with emotion, because I thought, what happens to her? How is she going to pay her rent? How is she going to make sure that she can take care of her basic needs in this incredibly difficult time? If you think about nothing else, think about that woman. Think about all the people that she represents in our city, who are hardworking people, who are the backbone of our small businesses, our restaurants, our bars, our hospitality industry. They need to be able to feed themselves and take care of their families. They need to work. But they can't if we are selfish and we don't do what needs to get done to protect ourselves so that we can start stabilizing the number of cases, see those cases go back down, and get back to some semblance of a normal life. Whether or not that happens, when it happens, is really in all of our hands. And I just really beseech you and urge you to think about that as you go about your daily business. Wear a face covering, folks. It's not political. It's public health. It's smart. Don't go outside without one. Don't bring a bunch of strangers into your house. Don't go to big 600-person parties like we saw on Halloween weekend. Be smart, be safe, and be the embodiment of what it means to be a Chicagoan. Thank you. Dr. Arwady.
Thank you, Mayor. So I continue to hear people here in Chicago who think that we're not talking about them when we're talking about the increases that we're seeing here from COVID-19. I'll be brief today. I'm going to show some data, but my goal is that every one of you is recognizing that when we are asking you to double down on the things that we know work, we absolutely mean you. There is not a single person in Chicago who is not at some level of increased risk from COVID, because our outbreak is surging in ways we have never before seen. We have an outbreak that is worse than what we saw in our first peak, with no signs of slowing down. As of today, our average number of new cases just in Chicago every day is 1,395 cases. To remind you, we want this number less than 200 cases per day. All summer, while things were surging around the country, we kept it in that 200 to 400 range. And then just over the last month, this is what we've seen. Our test positivity citywide is now 10.9%. That means more than 1 in 10 of the people being tested for COVID right now are coming back positive. That should be less than 5%. And it was. But now it's been shooting up with no signs of slowing down. Here's what that means in terms of our numbers. We've had more than 108,000 people diagnosed with COVID-19 here in Chicago. Almost 15,000 of those people are active with COVID right now, meaning they've been tested and they're infectious. They're potentially spreading COVID. But we know that there are 5 to 7 times as many cases here as those that are being tested. And so we know there are actually between 70,000 and 105,000 Chicagoans with active COVID right now. Yes, most people eventually recover. We can see 83% of the people with COVID here in Chicago have recovered, although every day we're learning more about long-term consequences that some people are seeing, even with recovery from COVID. But we've also had more than 3,000 deaths. And this increase in cases is already leading to an increase in hospitalizations, ICUs, people on the ventilator. We've seen a small uptick in deaths, and unfortunately, there's no reason to think that won't also slow down. Let's turn these numbers into what this means for your life. Right now, if you take a random group of people here in Chicago, if you get 10 people together, there is a 1 in 3 chance that someone in that randomly selected group of 10 Chicagoans has COVID-19 right now. A 1 in 3 chance in a 10-person gathering. Getting together with a randomly selected group of 50 Chicagoans, there is a 9 in 10 chance that someone in that group has COVID-19. And so if you are getting together with people in any context and thinking that you're not being exposed to an increased risk of COVID, think again. I imagine all of you, like me, are hearing more stories every day about people in your orbit. You're hearing about the babysitter's husband and the uncle and the neighbor and the person in your own household. That's because there's so much more COVID. And every opportunity that COVID has to spread, it will take. It doesn't care whether this is someone you know and love. It's just looking for an opportunity. And when you're gathering, particularly without both people wearing masks, without keeping that social distancing, and especially when you're letting your guard down, that's when we see spread happen. Chicago cases are still growing without signs of slowing. On the right there, that's our growth curve. See how sharply that's rising? Just as sharply as it was the first time. Our doubling time is at 12 days right now. If we don't slow this down, and soon, we will have hundreds of thousands of new COVID cases by the end of the year here in Chicago. That means you need to make changes in your behavior. We have seen also, some people think this isn't me. We've seen increases across all race ethnicity groups. We've seen increases in every zip code in Chicago. We've seen increases in all age groups, including among older Chicagoans. So if you're telling yourself, it doesn't matter, it's just the young people, they're not getting sick, think again. We've had a doubling just over these last few weeks in people over 60, over 70, over 80. We're seeing surging cases again in some of our long-term care facilities. And now, cases in our 40 to 49-year-olds are leading the pack, followed by 30 to 39-year-olds and 18 to 29-year-olds. Every age group is seeing increases. And that's because, folks, we have community spread. We have an outbreak that does not discriminate at this point and is just looking for opportunity. We have more than twice as many people hospitalized, not in the ICU in Chicago hospitals, as we did just in late September. Right now, today, 646 people are in Chicago hospitals, not in the ICU, with COVID-19. Today, 179 people are in Chicago hospital ICUs with COVID-19. That's more than twice as many as were in the ICU just in early October. And finally, today there are 91 patients in Chicago hospitals today on ventilators, the machine that helps you breathe, with COVID-19. More than twice as many again as we were seeing in early October. We know how to turn these curves around. We did it once before, and the guidance has actually not changed very substantially. We get a lot of questions about where are you seeing spread? Let me tell you, the Chicago Department of Public Health has a lot of teams. We have a team that works on workplace investigations, long-term care, congregate settings, our homeless teams. We have a team that works on youth settings, our pediatric cases, our congregate settings there. We have teams that just work on cases in the community that don't seem like they're connected. Every single one of those teams is reporting dramatic increases because people are picking up COVID in the community and then bringing it to whatever setting they are next in. But the risk remains highest when folks are getting together with those they love and letting down their guard. Just this week, we have a wedding. We're up to 15 cases now of people ranging from their 30s to their 60s. We have a birthday party with a 1-year-old who's been infected. Parents invited a very small number of people over to celebrate a birthday. All 6 of the people at that party now have COVID. Nobody had symptoms on the day of the party because people are very efficient, unfortunately, at spreading COVID in the 2 days before they get symptoms, and there are people who don't develop symptoms at all but can spread COVID. That is why, even if you are feeling well, you must wear a face covering. You must keep your distance. You must wash your hands, and you must think of others. You just heard that we're not going to be able to have a traditional Thanksgiving this year. The hope is we can turn this around and get to a point where we don't need to admonish you. We can say we're seeing progress because I know we can do this. It comes from when we take the science around what we know works and recognize this means me. What can I do today to limit my risk? I'm not going to invite somebody into my home who doesn't live there unless it's essential. I'm not going to gather with people in really any setting without strict precautions. I'm absolutely not going to attend a party. I'm absolutely not going to take risks with other people's lives. We know what to do. It's just time that we buckle down and do it. Bring up Karen Norrington-Reeves, CEO of the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership.
Thank you, Dr. Arwady. Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased to be here today to share how the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership is helping those who have lost jobs in all sectors, but particularly in the restaurant sector due to COVID-19. As you know, the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership operates the public workforce system in the city of Chicago and Cook County. We create and manage federally funded and philanthropically funded programs for job seekers and employers alike through our comprehensive network of workforce development organizations. The partnership is the largest local workforce development system in the nation, comprised of more than 70 community-based organizations, 10 American Job Centers, and 4 sector-driven workforce centers, one of which is focused on hospitality and tourism as well as retail, and so the restaurant business falls firmly within that sector. For nearly a decade, we have focused on delivering comprehensive workforce development services. So this means that we analyze the industry trends and partner with leaders across all aspects of our local economy. For years, we've partnered with the hospitality sector as it sought to hire new staff. And we stand here today ready to be there as that labor force is reduced. Since March, more than 30,000 hospitality workers in Cook County have received temporary layoff notices. Roughly 1/3 of those are specifically in the restaurant and food services sector. We know many restaurants initially expected that this would be temporary, so they reduced staff hours or they furloughed some workers, but many of these temporary cuts have indeed become permanent. We also know that many workers went back to their jobs, only now to face the prospect of a second layoff. Restaurant workers have transferable skills, make no doubt about that. Skills that would be useful in other industries. Skills such as customer service, communications, critical thinking, and adaptability. By working with the partnership's network of agencies, job seekers can utilize and leverage those transferable skills, receive additional training at no cost, and ultimately find employment in other sectors such as healthcare or retail or transportation, distribution, and logistics or information technology until the restaurant sector rebounds. One of our strengths as a workforce system is the comprehensive nature of the services we offer job seekers. We provide career coaching, as the mayor mentioned earlier, resume writing, interview preparation, occupational training, job placement, and then retention services once someone has actually been placed into employment. Mayor Lightfoot asked that we ensure that restaurant workers who have lost their jobs are able to access our services. And so for that reason, we are pleased to announce today the creation of a new website, ChiServes.com. Chi, C-H-I, serves, S-E-R-V-E-S.com. And in Spanish, ChiSirve.com. On it, a job seeker can input his or her contact information to be connected to staff at an agency in one of our networks. I also want to be clear that our site will be translated into Polish and Mandarin. The site also houses information on resources, workshops, and programs developed to help participants become re-employed as quickly as possible. In addition, we are launching a new text campaign where, once registered, recipients will receive weekly blasts of current job listings. We will probably do this at least twice a week, certainly once a week, but our hope is to do it twice a week. By texting SERVES to 474747 or Sirve for Spanish speakers, workers will receive texts with information about who's hiring now, because there are jobs right now. There are employers that are hiring right now. We will also be informing people of upcoming virtual and in-person workshops and hiring events. We look forward to serving these workers and meeting the needs of those who have served all of us. The partnership is capable of assisting you in finding fulfilling work during this very challenging time. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Alderman Tunney, a restaurateur himself.
Thank you, and good afternoon. For the record, Tom Tunney, for 40 years owner of Ann Sather Restaurants, but 18 years on this esteemed council. Before I get into remarks, I want to compliment all the strong commissioners, these women commissioners, and our woman mayor. It's nice to be surrounded by such strong women leading our city during this pandemic. I am especially concerned, as the mayor says, about our hospitality industry. You know that the restaurant industry, tourism, and hotels represents such a huge part of our economy. And while the mayor has said there are beloved industries, they are beleaguered industries as we speak. And many of us have been in business for a number of years, but as I've told the mayor and our deputy mayor, it's really difficult to see a business closed. It's very difficult to get a business open, but to actually close a business, it takes so much more energy to try to revive them. So some of the programs we're doing today is to ask the consumers, ask everyone to help support neighborhood, local, retail, and restaurant and hospitality related stuff. So I compliment the mayor and the work that we will be doing as legislators on trying to build this package together for relief, and also to thank our partners at Cook County for their job creation, retention programs, and retooling some of our employees. But those of us that hire people, and it's a huge responsibility, know that successful businesses are only through quality, successful employees and their training and their retention and stuff. So we really don't want to lose any of our employees. And, you know, it's just very difficult to try to meet payroll when the revenues are coming in maybe 50% if we're lucky. So you talk to restaurateurs, whether it's delivery programs or customers coming in and picking up, it's still a very small fraction of what it means to stay in business. And most of our small businesses run on very small margins, and most of them employ lots of people. So it's really incumbent that we do everything we can to keep our small businesses in business and to keep our neighborhoods alive, for that matter of fact. And so with that being said, we thought that the pandemic would be short-lived, and I want to compliment our health commissioner. She and I have not always agreed, but I can't think of a more professional epidemiologist at the helm of our Chicago Health Department. I think I said that to the mayor the first day that we had this pandemic, that we're in good hands, and we are still in good hands. And thank you for continuing to remind that this pandemic was going to have a second wave, and unfortunately the second wave seems to be more dangerous than the first. But we are going to work with our colleagues on City Council on some of the takeout fees. For those of us in business right now, since the pandemic has hit, about 50% of total sales are coming through the delivery third-party mechanisms. And for those of you in the business know, whether you're consumer ordering or whether you're a restaurateur trying to deliver, some of these fees are very confounding. They just don't make sense. And I know we've been working with the mayor's office and our colleagues about a transparency bill, so the consumer and the business know exactly what the fees are and such. And I can say that we've had a good working relationship. We've been up on the podium together with our friends from Grubhub, Postmates, et cetera. But this second pandemic is so business threatening forever that they've got to help us on the short term by really helping reduce the fees, at least in the short term. We have got to get through this phase two. This is one of the most robust economic times of the year, generally the fourth quarter, whether you're in retail or whether you're in restaurants. And to have this devastation in the fourth quarter really hurts our economic activity for the city. If we don't get through November and December, it's going to be very difficult in January and February, and that's normal times. So it's really critical that the third-party providers are stepping up to the plate and doing what they can to really cap fees on a short-term basis. And I know we've got work to do with our legislative, my colleagues and the mayor's office, and want to compliment and look forward to working with our finance chair, August Back, and my Southside chairman friend, Matt O'Shea. We're going to reach out to every single alderman. They have heard from their small businesses. They have heard from us on our Zoom meetings about the devastation. And I think we set a strong package out. I think we can get it done through the legislative process, hopefully in the month of November, so that we can get this done as soon as possible in order to affect our economy. So as I said, they've got to make business. We've got to stay in business. Trust me, if the restaurants go out of business, there's nobody to pick up from. So we've got to be working together. And I know the mayor's leadership, with our deputy mayor and our BACP chair and others, will get this done. And I really want to applaud them. And hopefully we all see this on the other side in early spring. And even so, it's going to take quite a bit into 2021 even if we have a vaccine in the near future. Because I've always said this, for every day that a business is shut down or people can't get out, it's going to take 2 days to recover. So I'm very nervous about 2021 and the vitality of our neighborhood retail. So with that, I think I'm going to introduce Carla, let me get this right, Augustinelli, I believe, from the West Loop Community Organization.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mayor, and thank you to our department heads.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your time and attention to all of us this afternoon. To echo the Alderman's comments, this is off script, so I apologize, Samir. But standing here with so many leaders in such a critical time in the world is really an honor. So I am a little nervous, but it's the truth. You know, we suffer from imposter syndrome oftentimes, and my goodness, there's big shoes on this platform this afternoon. So as the Alderman mentioned, I'm Carla Augustinelli. I'm the Executive Director of the West Loop Community Organization, a nonprofit delegate agency of the City of Chicago, which represents both residents and businesses within the West Loop Fulton Market area for over 25 years now. Before this pandemic, restaurant and food service jobs represented 10% of the entire Illinois workforce. That's nearly 600,000 jobs, generating over $30 billion in sales per year. It's now November, and employment levels are still down over 15%. Illinois joined 32 other states that shed restaurant jobs just last month alone. Our response options remain limited. In the West Loop, home of Chicago's most bustling restaurant row, we partnered with a sister agency, another delegate agency, West Central Association, to expand sidewalk cafes for several long outdoor dining pilots, which help support dozens of local restaurants. Targeted city, state, and federal aid has helped keep doors open, and our agency continues to work across the board to promote our restaurants, small and big alike. For example, J.P. Graziano's, which has been at the corner of Randolph and Peoria for over 80 years, to Formentos, to the Global McDonald's, and to Nobu, who just opened their doors a few months ago. But yet we find ourselves in another coronavirus surge, and it's getting colder outside. The future of our largest employment sector hangs in the balance. This is why today we're here to support the mayor and the city's initiative of the Chicago Hospitality Grant Program, of which, as the mayor mentioned, $10 million will provide $10,000 grants to approximately 1,000 restaurants and bars. Applications will be available the week of November 16th. This is yet another critical step taken to make sure that employees and their families are being fed. We know this is not enough, but it's a big step. We've been and will continue to work closely with the Mayor of Chicago and her dedicated team, especially the Department of Business Affairs Consumer Protection. Commissioner Ascarino has been a tremendous example for our community. The city is responding the best way that they can. We know things are not easy. Decisions can be uncomfortable at times or even painful, but please try to remember that we are Chicago strong and we are in this together. Chicago has a resilience like no other, one that I'm very proud of. Let's lead by example and put our best fight forward. Also, please remember to lean into your neighborhood delegate agencies. We are here to help in any way that we can. We are often the first, second, or third call that a business makes when they need help. It's not an easy job. Rest assured that we are doing everything that we can. We carry your issues and concerns with responsibility and respect. A list of local neighborhood agencies can be found on the Chicago's website. And now we'll turn back to the mayor for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, Mayor. Stacy Baca here with ABC 7 Chicago. There are plenty of questions. I'm going to stay on topic for the moment here. A few different questions coming in. What kind of cap rate are you considering for these delivery fees? From Crane specifically, AD Quig, less than 5% that Alderman Wegesbeck proposed this spring, or is that going to be more?
Well, I think that's something that we've got to work out with members of the council. I don't want to speculate and negotiate here in the public, but as you heard from Alderman Tunney, who understands this firsthand, there's got to be some relief. Our businesses are really suffering, and when the indoor dining is now closed and there's going to be even more reliance upon delivery, we've got to make sure that as much of that cost of delivery, or I should say the revenue from delivery, goes back into the hands of the restaurants themselves.
I know from Univision they're asking, so for the Takeout Chicago contest here, people have to order from all 10 different restaurants, question mark?
Yes.
If so, aren't you just rewarding people who can still afford to buy takeout at this point?
Well, look, the point of this is to try to encourage those who can to support our local businesses. Not everybody's going to be in the same situation, and we obviously recognize that, but it's underscoring, I think, the necessity to really lean in and support our small neighborhood restaurants.
I am going to ask you and Dr. Arwady to address this next issue. It has to do with the Chicago travel order. At this point, the state of Illinois, there are several states, 22 in fact, that are on the travel order that have the same rate or even fewer cases than our state. So doesn't it make sense to adjust that travel order or get rid of it in some form?
I'll let Dr. Arwady address that, but obviously we're very much aware of what the percent positivity is and other expansion of cases in states, certainly in our surrounding area and across the country. So we are looking at what makes the most sense, and we'll make an announcement about that soon.
What are you expecting to announce, Mayor? Because clearly at this point...
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. So is that...
What I can share is that next week we will be announcing some adjustments to the travel order with a lot of attention on the election and many other things this week. We wanted to make sure there was good attention to this, but the point is, COVID is surging absolutely everywhere in the United States. We think it's important to be able to show risk levels related to travel. And the bottom line is that you already heard that, gathering around the time of Thanksgiving is not a safe proposition at this point. Broadly speaking, travel is also not a safe proposition at this point to the great majority of the U.S. So we will be sharing more details next week related to the travel order.
Dr. Arwady, I know that you're saying you're going to be sharing it, but does that mean there'll still be a travel order and you're adjusting it? Or are you going to eliminate it at this point?
There will still be a travel order.
There will still be a travel order.
There will still be a travel order, and there will be more details about it next week.
Nothing that you want to share at this point?
No.
No. All right, thank you. So I do have to ask you, just following up to that, Mayor, so what do you have to say about that? Because some people could travel to Colorado right now where there's fewer cases per 100,000 than Illinois, but you could go anywhere in Illinois where it's actually a worse situation, so it just doesn't make sense.
Look, we're in a difficult time, there's no question about it. And we look at the surrounding area, we look at our neighbors, like Wisconsin is really, really struggling. Indiana is struggling. Iowa's been struggling a whole time because apparently their governor doesn't believe that COVID-19 exists. So the reality is that we're seeing cases really explode in almost every region of the country, and unfortunately, the Midwest is leading that. As Dr. already said, we look at these statistics and what we're seeing both in Chicago, the surrounding area, and the Midwest and across the country every single day. And as she said, we will be announcing some adjustments, but I don't want to go further at this point.
All right. I have all kinds of questions from fellow reporters, so I'm going to do it as I receive them in line here. From questions about Special Events Commissioner telling aldermen today that there is currently no funding for events next year. What are the chances of Taste of Chicago Air and Water Show happening next year? And if they are canceled, what would the $9 million in potential savings be spent on instead?
Well, what you have to understand is that DCASE is funded by a revenue stream, hotels and restaurants. Those revenues have just gone through the floor. So it's not like there's a pot of money sitting there. The budget is projected based upon what we expect those revenues to come into. And if those revenues don't come in, then that substantially changes the trajectory of the kind of programming that DCASE can expect to put on. So it's way too premature for us to be able to speculate about what events may or may not happen next year. But it's not like DCASE is sitting on a stack of money and then hoarding it in the hope that better times come. But look, the reality is, in the context of this kind of surge that we're seeing today, and I'm reminded of the one slide that Dr. Arwady put in, we're seeing cases literally go like this. Now's not the time for us to really be thinking much about big outdoor events.
From Univision 2, they are asking, is it safe to say that CPS parents won't be sending their kids to school for in-person learning on November 9th? We have a few questions about that, actually. What's the future for CPS students?
That's still very much work in progress. I don't want to put a specific date on it, but as I said before, this to me is it's a balancing of two things, but primarily it's a balancing around equity. We know that some children learn just fine through remote learning, but we also know that some do not at all, and I worry very much every single day that they are falling behind. And when we think about some of our children that are growing up in difficult circumstances where maybe there's a parent in the home, the stress that puts on that parent of choosing between job or being the homeschool parent. Think about the fact that even though we've, I think, done a yeoman's job, meaning CPS, and putting devices and bringing connectivity to homes that didn't have it before, the fact of the matter is remote learning doesn't work for some of our kids, and those kids are going to be left behind. So for me, this is really about equity in our children. We're obviously going to be guided by the public health metrics, guided by the science. We're not going to do anything that puts kids in harm's way, but we've got to start thinking about a path to get those kids who are falling behind back into school, and that's precisely what's happening.
And can I have you respond to that, Dr. Arwady, too? Because there's a question here from the Sun-Times essentially saying in July that your threshold for keeping schools closed was a rolling average of 400 daily cases or 8% positivity. So yesterday the city was at 1,300 cases, 11% positivity. Have those thresholds changed? Are you still comfortable trying to phase in CPS reopening as well with the current metrics?
Yeah, so a couple points on that. Number one is that we have learned a lot about the risk of COVID related to schools. And what we have seen broadly is that around the country, even around the world, schools, within school transmission has not been the major source of spread that we honestly expected that it would be. What was interesting is that during the surge over the summer here in the US, particularly across the South and across the West, we saw a lot of states and jurisdictions move ahead with in-person learning at levels that, frankly, I was concerned we would see major surges of cases as a result. To be honest, we didn't see that. And here in Chicago, we have had thousands of students in school, in our parochial schools, in our private schools, thousands of staff teaching them. And that has gone remarkably well from a COVID perspective, where the protocols are being followed appropriately. So we've learned a lot since June when we were initially laying that out, and I feel much more comfortable with the idea of in-person education if the appropriate precautions and protocols are in place. Certainly, we are also watching this increase with concern, and we are in conversations about what would be appropriate in terms of timing. Safety, of course, for students and staff remains the top priority as it has all along. But as the mayor said, we're also really concerned about the indirect effects of COVID. And the fact that right here in Chicago, where there are families that can afford to send children, perhaps, to schools where you need to pay, or who can afford to bring in personal level of teachers and educators, we are seeing children being educated in different ways here based on income, based on resources. And that is something that has the potential for long-term outcomes well beyond the immediate risk from COVID. So we're not making an announcement today. We continue to be in conversation, certainly with CPS, but the path toward recognizing that students who most need that in-person education is absolutely a path that we continue to be committed to when the time is appropriate.
Okay. Mayor, we are getting some political questions now, too, from WBEZ. What does the Biden-Harris administration mean for Chicago, and likewise, if it's a second Trump administration?
Well, I'd like to not think about the latter, but in all seriousness, look, I have great confidence in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I think that they are committed to, first and foremost, really taking charge of this horrible pandemic, coming up with real strategies, and listening to local officials like mayors. So that gives me a great deal of hope. A new administration, if it is Biden and Harris, is going to be walking into a lot of deep problems. COVID-19 being one of them, an economy that is on the verge of collapse, a loss of standing in the world, environmental hazards. I mean, the list is really, really long. The thing that gives me hope is knowing a little bit about these two people, that they will govern with empathy. And that means a lot, particularly given what we've been through the last 4 years.
We're also getting some questions about if you're being considered for a position, if the Biden-Harris team wins, a cabinet position, perhaps in the DOJ?
No. Here's my joke. There's been speculation that I'm being considered for the Attorney General position. And I will jokingly say that I will have my swearing in the backyard of my mansion on the north side. I'm not going anywhere. I have the one job in public service that I want. Certainly, my expectation is that we will be in partnership with the new administration. I think that's going to be critical to make sure that Chicago's interests are advocated for, well protected, and that we get our fair share of federal resources. But I have absolutely no interest or intention to do anything but be the mayor of this great city.
All right. I have like 5-7 more questions, Mayor. I know I'm getting the wrap here, too, so you're going to have to kind of tell me. Civic Federation, this is from Fran Spillman. Civic Federation has questioned your $3.7 billion capital plan without a new funding source, particularly at a time when you're already planning to refinance $1.7 billion, claim $950 million in savings in the first 2 years. How can the city actually afford, though, such an ambitious plan, even if it's needed?
Well, we can't afford not to. We have not had a logical way of funding infrastructure for the long term. Our bridges, our tunnels, our roads are crumbling. And we've got to address these issues, and we've got to take matters into our own hands. As we've seen, we're not getting saved by somebody else, some other governmental entity. We've got to have rationality in the way that we make priorities on the various infrastructure changes that are needed. We need to work in conjunction with our partners in City Council, and I think that the plan that we put forward does all those things. The need is there. We have to figure out a way to move forward and not just say it's too much, it's too big. We got the same blowback when we said we're going to start the process around lead service lines. That can's been kicked down the road so many times, it's unrecognizable. But I came into office, I'm here to solve big problems, and I'm not going to shy away from them. We have to be committed to looking and taking on the needs of our city, and having a rational long-term capital plan is a critical part of who we must be. And let's face it, the other upside of that, because I believe the government can be a stimulus, is if we are actually committed to long-term capital infrastructure plans. What does that mean? It means we're creating jobs, and jobs is something that we all desperately need.
I know from Streets Blog here, John's asking that wouldn't it make sense that if the city were to provide actually free masks and sanitizers on every bus and train to make CTA and public transportation an option for people who can't afford those items?
Well, we have, I think, over the course of this pandemic, probably purchased somewhere between 2 and 3 million masks that we have passed out through the aldermen's offices, and we've done a tremendous amount to reach people who can't afford it. And the CTA has done I think, an incredible job in keeping buses and trains running, keeping them running in a way that the trains and buses and the platforms and stations are clean and safe for the riders. So if there's more that needs to be done, we're going to step up and do our part. But we have done a tremendous amount already to make sure that every Chicagoan who needs, excuse me, PPE, mask, whatever it is, that we're there for them. So obviously, if there's more to do, we will do it, but I think we've done a lot.
Last,
Over up there, Stacy, they know where to find us.
oh, okay. 606 and Lakefront Trail, are you considering closing those at this point? Because that's where we were. We're worse off than when they were actually closed, it seems like.
Well, the numbers are worse, but if you actually go to the lakefront or you go to the 606, I have been really pleased with how people are keeping it moving, how they are not lingering, and how they're wearing masks and they're not gathering in large groups. It has really been remarkable. I spent a lot of time once we closed down the lakefront and the 606 thinking about what's the best way and really coming up with a lot of different permutations. We decided, you know what? We're just going to try to educate people in compliance. And there have been some exceptions, and I've been vocal about those. But I think for the most part, people understand that these treasures in our city will only be there and available to them if they're smart about the way that they use it. And like I said, I am extraordinarily pleased with what I've been seeing on the lakefront and the 606 and other trails. People get it. Where we need some traction is inside people's homes and these private settings. That's the place where we have the biggest challenges.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank